Was she at least cool?
Yeah, she was totally cool.
Oh yeah.
So the whole idea was, I think she wanted to be an actress. I just wanted to promote my magazine.
So that's what these shows kind of also were, right? These were just a way for these people to get on there and promote some things, and then I'll go on a date and make a show out of it also.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's all scripted. It's all scripted. So you go on the date.
No shit.
Yeah, you go on the date, and they're like, okay, after the date, you guys can't talk to each other. I'm like, well, how are we not going to talk to each other? I'm like, I'm talking to her. I have her phone number, and she has my phone number. And they're like, no, you're not supposed to talk, all right? The producers tell you that. But we go on the date, and then after the date, they're like, okay, the producers will call and ask me, like, what did you think of the date? Was it a love connection? And I'm like, yeah, she was nice. I didn't really feel any spark or anything. I didn't hate her, And then all of a sudden I get a call like later that week, and it's her screaming and yelling and swearing at me. What are you saying? This is a bad date. What did you say about me doing that? I'm like, I never said any of those things. And then I'm like, let's get the producer on the line. So we get the producer, and the producer's like, look, this is television. You either have a good date or you have a bad date. There's nobody's going to watch.
No vanilla stuff going on.
Nobody's going to watch a okay date. Yeah, going back to the magazine, we had, Blink-182. We gave them their first cover, and that was before Travis was in the band. Eve 6, Alien Ant Farm.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so we met. So when I was doing the magazine, again, it was very small. We were only doing, I think, 10,000 copies of no cover. It wasn't taking off like Scratch did because, I would have a good band and then it would take off and I'd get advertising and then bad. I didn't have the consistent advertising because I didn't have the niche like with Scratch. So I didn't realize that. And it took me a long time to realize where I fit into the market and understanding it and how to position it for advertisers. Because all I really think is, well, I know bands. I of course you're going to like this band. Why wouldn't you like this band? And, I wasn't right all the time, but I was right a lot. And I started putting, what was that band? I can't think of it. Anyways, I put another band from San Diego. Was it POD? I think it was POD.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so we had that. And then I had...
And these are all bands that you're just putting in your magazine and putting on the cover of the magazine at the time, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, we've had other bands that, didn't make the cover, which should have probably because, just the timing and stuff. Like Chili Peppers, when they first came out, I had them on the cover. And I bumped another band to put the Chili Peppers on the cover because after a while, being in L.A., which bands are about to get signed. So then I was like, I'll just cherry pick them,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Make it easier for myself.
So when it comes to the magazine, it's even at this time now, we're just talking about the covers. You actually have stories, there's feature stories, but there's other bands that are in the magazine itself.
Yeah, like Slipknot.
Okay.
Like Slipknot was one of the first bands that I remember we put in one of the first issues of No Cover. Okay. And I had a really good music editor at the time, and he's like, dude, you gotta check out Slipknot, blah blah blah, they're awesome. I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool, but we already have a cover. I'm like, but we could put them in, and then you're like, okay. But so we would put these bands in there, and then again, we were small, and then I was working as for the record labels, and I was doing street teaming. So basically, I ran San Diego because I moved to San Diego, and then I was living in San Diego, and I was broke as a joke again. I moved in with my friend. Now he's the stockbroker guy. He was working as a investment banker at the time, so he had a really nice condo in near La Jolla, and so he worked in La Jolla, and then I lived with him and his wife that I introduced them to in college. So it was kind of cool. Then I was broke again, and then I was doing whatever I could to make ends meet. So I worked as street teaming, and the record labels were like, we'll advertise, but you got to put up all these posters at all these places and do all this for us. So I was like, oh my God. But I was young. I was stupid. So I did do it. And then I started becoming the guy that they knew as the promotion guerrilla marketing guy, right? So I got to flyers for, raves and, distribution in all these places while I was distributing my magazine. So that was the income that I needed. And then it was the San Diego Music Awards, and I was flyering for some clubs down there and hitting up the San Diego Music Awards. And I flyered this big RV. And on this RV, it said spinrecords.com. And it was ugly lime green. And I was like, okay, I'll flyer that one. And then all of a sudden, this guy comes bolting out of the RV. Hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, dude, it's a flyer. Relax. And he goes, no. He goes, we want to hire you to do flyering for us. And I'm like, I don't want to do flyering anymore. I go, I got this magazine, because flyering is not easy work, man. I would have a huge bag on my shoulder with magazines, and I'm like passing out magazines like a paper boy.
Yeah, I was going to say, like a paper route.
Yeah, and then I got the giant stacks of, they're, 4x6 cards, but they're heavy. And it's like, I'm passing them out. And I'm like, oh, this is painful, man. This is a hard life. And he goes, no, come on in here. We want to talk. And I'm like, look, I've got a magazine. I was like, well, we got some magazines in here. It's like, which one's yours? I'm like, oh, they had no cover. I was like, that's cool. And I said, look, I'm about to go do a deal with MP3, and they just got $360 million. So I was like, let's go after that. So I wrote a business plan. I remember sitting down. It was at my music editor's apartment. We were all brainstorming of how we were going to get this MP3 money. And so I was the only one with a marketing degree. So I wrote the business plan, but we were just brainstorming back and forth. And as I was typing it, writing it, I was like, okay, cool. Now I got to go to MP3. So I was 23 years old. I'm like knocking on their doors. I'm calling them. They're not taking any of my phone calls. They're not letting me in. They had those key cards or whatever to get in, so you couldn't even go in to see a receptionist. And they were just blowing me off big time. And I was like, oh, this sucks. And so, but I had that business plan. And so I asked Spin Records, I go, what are you guys like? And they're like, oh, MP3? I go, yeah. And they're like, well, we're kind of like MP3, but we don't have as much money. And I'm like, oh, all right. How much do you have? And they're like, 32 million. I was like, oh, all right.
That'll do.
Yeah. I'm like, well, I'm about to go meet with MP3. I go, so I don't know how this is going to work, And they're like, well, can you meet with us first? And I'm like, sure, yeah, I'll meet with you guys. I had nothing going on with MP3.
Oh, right. This is beautiful.
Fake it till you make it, right?
Oh, yeah, man.
That's LA. And so I'm like, okay. So I go to the office in Carlsbad. It was beautiful. And they had this, I think it was like 40,000 square foot building. And I go in there, and it's just really intimidating. And I'm just in jeans and a T-shirt, and I have my business plan. And I go in, and I start talking to them, and I'm just bombing. I was nervous. I was sweating. And this guy walks in a little late. He goes, sorry, I'm late. And I looked, and I was like, I know that guy. Why do I know that guy? And I'm like, that guy, I was at his festival last year. It was one of the first time I met him. And I remember Blink-182 was on the cover. So this had to be 1998, because maybe a little earlier. And then, because I knew Blink-182, and then they were opening act on this guy's festival. And I had the magazine. I remember I had the magazine, and I was passing them out at the festival. And then I crawled under the stage, and I remember seeing Mark Hoppus in a hammock. And I go, hey, who puts on this event? And he goes, Kevin Lyman. And I said, can you introduce me to this guy? He's like, yeah. So I meet Kevin, and he's like, yeah, this is my festival. It's Warp You know, it was in Irvine. I don't think it was a tour yet. I think it was just Warp Festival. And I just met him, and I just thank, cool festival. I never thought I would see him again. Well, the guy that walks in late is Kevin Lyman. He's the vice president of music at this .com. And I was like, wait a minute, I know you. Where do I know you? And then it clicked. And then all of a sudden things turned around. And Kevin's like, well, what does this guy want? And he's like, this guy knows his music. Give it to him. So I got my investment from those guys. And
all because you asked to be introduced to this guy when you went to that festival. If you don't think to do something like that, those little things that pay off down the road, right? I mean, like, that's huge.
Yeah, it's all about relationships and networking, right? We were talking off the camera on basically advertising, right? How to get advertising. Advertising is just building relationships, right? And once you built those relationships and those relationships are strong, they want to help you. Now, you obviously have to provide a service and you have to help them, just like you were talking about with your new advertiser.
Yeah, right.
It just makes a lot of sense with what you're doing and then how you're helping them. So you figured it out, right? It took me a while to figure it out. It took me a long time. But once I learned, like, hey, meet whoever you can meet. You never know what's going to happen. Try to build solid relationships. Do stand-up job. Do what you say you're going to do and follow through. And don't be a flake, right? Because there's tons of flakes in LA. So I'm like, you'll stand out. And so that's what I did. And so he remembered me, and he said, yeah, give it to him. So I go and I get the investment money, and they brought us into the office. So we had our own office, and we were in the basement of the 40,000 square foot building, but it was massive. I mean, it was like a gymnasium down there with some, it kind of reminds me of, well, we'll get to that right a little later, but it kind of reminds me of where I am right now.
The place that you're starting, which we definitely will get into.
Yeah. So I was like, this is pretty cool. And we were able to do a lot of fun things because they're a .com. They have $32 million. So we were at every major event. And then they bought in Vegas the Edom Music Festival, which was this huge conference music festival. It was in every casino all over the place. And there was bands every single place. I mean, it was massive. And guess what? Because they bought it, they owned it. No Cover was the main media sponsor.
No shit.
Yeah, so we got a lot of cool things being associated with that. And the other thing was Robert Shapiro, who did the not the Grammys, but the Oscars, right? He was the COO of the company. Ice-T was there. He was part of the company. Was it Brian from Priority Records back in the day, with Ice Cube, I think was the biggest artist at the time.
So you're meeting all these people and this is just furthering everything that you're trying to do because you're doing a magazine.
Right. So what my business plan was, you're a .com, the internet just started. There's no yellow pages for the internet. I think there was web something or another. There wasn't Google at the time.
Right.
I mean, this is really
the beginning,
the dinosaur age of the internet, right? And so how do you let people know you're out there? So my business plan was advertise with us. We'll give you advertising. We'll give you publicity. We'll give you all the running points you need. People don't have to know that we're associated, but you can use this to go get more investors, because it was all smoke and mirrors at the time, because everybody had tried to come up with a website, right? But you had to spend money to get people to your website, and you had to prove to them that your website's viable and it's worth it and everything like this, or nobody's going to give you any money.
Right.
Now, we had Hollywood money, right? So we had all these Hollywood people just investing, because they wanted it to be like Amazon, right? They wanted it to grow and big. I always say that most .coms just crashed and burned, right? And this one did. They blew through $32 million in a year.
Wow.
Yeah. But we were able to go from 10,000 copies to 100,000 copies every single month.
Wow.
And we set up distribution from San Diego to San Francisco to Phoenix, Arizona to Las Vegas. And then eventually we would go to San Pedro, and put everything in a container and send it to Hawaii. And I met this guy that came to us, said, hey, I'm going to be moving. He lived in La Jolla. He was a trust fund kid. And he's like, I'm moving to Hawaii, and you should send your magazines out to me. I'm going to run some clubs, because he was a club promoter in San Diego as well. And he's like, I'm going to run clubs in Hawaii. And I was like, all right. And he's like, I'll do all the distribution. Just give me a free ad, and you can stay at my place. And he had a sweet pad, so on North Shore. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So I drop off the magazine in San Pedro, fly to Hawaii, go hang out with him. And then I would go and I'd try to sell advertising, So I met Kelly Slater out there. I met a lot of cool people, threw black flies, sunglasses. And then, it just, nobody ever paid. Like, I got all this great advertising, but nobody would ever pay. And it was like,
they'd agree to it, but never follow through.
Yeah, and they would give me their artwork and everything. And then they're like, the thing about advertising is you get, especially with publications, not so much now, because I've changed the terms on the way I do business, because I don't want to fall into that trap again. But you have to wait 30 to 60 days to get paid, and you're putting out another issue, and it's not cheap. So, I got burned on all that, although I had fun in Hawaii.
Yeah, right.
So
experience, but not moneymaker.
Yeah, but I met these kids, and this again dates me. They gave me a tape. I listened to it, and I was like, oh, this sounds good. It's good. And they're like, what did you think? What did you think? And I'm like, this was the next time that I get to Hawaii. And I said, it's good. I said, but you sound just like Sublime. Like, isn't that awesome? And I'm like, no, it's not. There's already a Sublime. You don't need another Sublime. I go, you need to find your own voice, right? And at that time, I've already worked with other artists that have, started off, as baby bands and became multi-platinum or gold artists. Yeah. And so I figured, I'm like, I'm going to give some advice to these guys. And so I said, just try to find your own sound. I kind of left it at that. And on the tape, it says Pepper. So it was the band, reggae band Pepper. And that's where I first met them. And I told them, I said, look, you're not good enough for a cover, right? You're not there. But I'll put you in, we had a section called Bands to Watch. And they were one of my first bands to watch bands. And they eventually, fast forward, I'm living in San Diego, and I get a call from, what is his name? From Ryan, and he was a famous snowboarder. So he signs Pepper to Volcom Records. And I was like, I get a call from him, Ryan Emigart. That's his name, Ryan Emigart. And he calls me, and he's like, hey, Mark, he goes, I've got this band, they're out of San Diego. And I'm like, okay, what band? I know every band in San Diego. And he goes, Pepper. I go, no, they're out of Hawaii. He goes, no, they used to be out of Hawaii. They live in San Diego now. They just moved to San Diego. He goes, can you put them in the magazine? I'm like, I already had them in the magazine. He's like, no, you need to listen to this. And I was like, whoa. And then they got on K-Rock, and then they started blowing up. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. Now, they still haven't had a cover yet. And so South by Southwest was coming. And they wound up, it was a few years before I gave them a cover, and South by Southwest was coming. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to put you guys on the cover of the magazine. And they were playing in, this is kind of cool. So they were being managed, they were on Volcom, but they were being managed by John Phillips and Matt Phillips, who also handled Slightly Stupid, but also handled Sublime back in the day. So it was like full circle now. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And so they were playing in Florida. I was doing a rooftop party at the Wave in South on 6th Street in Austin, Texas. And I said, I really want you guys to play. And they're like, we're in Florida. And I'm like, well, there's, a way. Well, we're in our bus. And I'm like, okay, this bus isn't going to make it. I go, what about a plane? And they're like, yeah, you going to fly us out? I go, let me look at ticket pricing, and I'll get back to you. And I looked at it. I was like, oh, this is going to be expensive, the whole band. And they're like, yeah, you got to put us up in a hotel and everything. So I called up Zildjian, and I got Zildjian to pay for it all.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so I put Zildjian as one of my big sponsors at South by Southwest, and I had a party with Pepper, and they were just signed to Atlantic Records at that time. And I just had them on the cover right before they got signed.
So this looks like you're a genius, dude. Every time
It looked like it, but I knew what was going on. I knew what was going on. But I met them first in Hawaii,
Right.
and a few years of putting them in the magazine for bands to watch, and eventually they get a cover. So every time I talk to a band and they're like, "Hey, we want a cover, I'm like, "Look, I'm gonna put you in bands to watch." Like, "No, we don't want to be in bands to watch." Blah blah. Well, then you don't be in the magazine. I don't know what to tell you. I'm just like, you gotta pay your dues.
Yeah,
You
it's a
gotta-
process here. There's a process of things that go
Yeah.
before that does.
I have 12 covers, right? Or 12. I put up 11. I have 12 covers, right? And that's
year,
it.
right.
That's it. That's all I get. And only one person can be on there.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are qualified, and you have to choose.
Right.
Who,
and I
who
didn't
gets it.
always choose the right band, but I chose the right band a lot. So that was my experience with that. And then we wound up doing No Cover Espanol. And
So you did a Spanish version of the magazine.
yes. And we met these guys. Because I lived in San Diego, we go down to TJ and we'd party and we'd bring the magazine, passing them out all over the place. And we caught the attention of this other magazine that was in Tijuana. And at first they weren't too happy with us. And their magazine was gorgeous. I mean, it was what No Cover became eventually. But I mean, it was full color, glossy, beautiful, and just high end everything. And I know why. I don't really want to say why it was such a beautiful magazine.
Oh, I can imagine where the money was coming from.
Yeah, the money was coming from someplace, right? But eventually, the guy that I met, Cesar Hank, and he's probably on here. He's a friend of mine here on social media. But Cesar Hank, his family is a very prominent family in Mexico, and he was pretty much, it was his baby that his father financed for him, and they had this beautiful office, they had everything, and what happened was his dad pulled the strings and it all went away. So there was all this wonderful, talented people, graphic designers, photographers, writers.
Out of work.
And I was like, come to me. And we put together No Cover Espanol. And we ran it for, I think it was a couple of years before. It got to the point where they were both free publications. So, and what was cool is when I entered that segment, and again, now I'm in a niche market, and I just kind of fell into it. I didn't really think about going into it for that reason, but it became that way. And during that time, nobody was really hitting the Hispanic market. And after doing the research, at the time, I'm sure it's even more now, but at the time it was 60% Hispanic.
In San Diego?
Or California.
Oh, the whole state.
The whole state.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, there's a huge market here. And as soon as I did that, I got Jack Daniels, I got Heineken, I got MTV
Sponsors
Trace,
started coming.
I had HBO Latino.
Oh, wow.
I had all these great, huge companies that I wanted to work with on the English side, but they weren't taking any of my advertising. And I was able to push or twist the arm a little bit and say, hey, I'm working with you on this. Can you give me a little help on the English one? And then I would get a bone here and there. And but we had great artists. We had Café de Cuba before Café de Cuba was on Coachella.
Oh.
We had Nortec Collective, we had Lale, we had Molotov, we had Shakira. We gave Shakira her first.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's probably the only one you probably recognize.
Right, yeah, I wouldn't. I'm not.
Because in the rock and Espanol and the Latin scene at the time, it was bubbling. And now it's gigantic market. It's huge. And I kick myself that because I got to the point where Spin Records went down and I had a choice because now I can't do 100,000 copies. I can't do that all the way with doing the distribution because I don't. Spin Records also gave me all their vehicles. So I had their RV, I had their Jeeps, I had anything I needed for distribution, their vans. So I would literally just pick up the magazine from the printer, and then we would drive. We would drive to Vegas, drop them off, party in Vegas. We partnered up with 107.3, the radio station out there. I'd give them an ad in there. I would show up on the radio, talk about the new issue, how it's out on the street, and then I would do that in Phoenix too. I worked with KUPD in Phoenix, and then it was cool because I got to do all the promotions on that issue, and it helped people understand about and get the word out about the magazine right away. And that helped spinrecords.com obviously too, because I would be on the radio and I would talk about, hey, check out spinrecords.com. And they were trying to be like a giant Amazon for selling music, right? Or an incubator too for getting the next big band signed to a record label. And they actually did. They signed Alien Ant Farm. But they only signed Alien Ant Farm because the first artist that they really loved was called The Color Red. And The Color Red were the two brothers, Mark and John Samora, that was related to Ty Samora, the bass player from Alien Ant Farm. So they loved Mark and John's band, The Color Red. So then, they said, well, can you bring in my brother's band? And they're like, yeah, all right, sure, we'll bring in your brother's band. They didn't really care. But they were focused on The Color Red. And The Color Red eventually gets signed to Martini Records, which is Lit's record label. But what happened is they there's losing money and they're burning through money. And near the end, they just started dropping all these bands. And the only one they hung on to was The Color Red. And Alien Ant Farm, once they got dropped, they got signed. Because Papa Roach got signed. And Alien Ant Farm and Papa Roach had a deal. Papa Roach is in Sacramento and Alien Ant Farm was in Riverside. And so they would swap shows. And that's what I tell bands. I go, find a band where you want to tour and befriend that band because you'll always have a place to play. And then just return that favor because then you can build a relationship. And that's what they did. And they had a pact. So it was literally, if we get signed, we're going to get you signed. If we get signed, then we're going to get you signed. And Papa Roach got signed first. And Papa Roach said, in their deal, we need an imprint label, and we're signing Alien Ant Farm. And that was how Alien Ant Farm got signed.
Oh, shit.
So, but we were always with Alien Ant Farm, and we were all in the same building. All these bands. I mean, I think they signed like 400, almost 500 bands. And Kevin Lyman was the vice president of music, and he was in charge. And we would have it was total .com money. I mean, we just had money to burn. So we would have a cafeteria. We'd have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, I was like, oh, this is cool. Well, I didn't realize why they did it because they wanted to keep their employees working, right? They didn't want them to go out and stop working. So they brought in this cafeteria and they had a chef and then we'd get our food. It was all free, So we're just like, oh, it's breakfast time, it's lunchtime, Yeah. So I would sit in there having lunch with Kevin Lyman, we'd just shoot the shit and talk and stuff like that. And then all these other bands were there too, and Alien Ant Farm and Color Red and all these bands, and we were all having lunch and talking. But they all had jobs, so they all hired them. They didn't pay them a lot, but they all hired them to do marketing or, publicity or whatever job they had to do. They put these bands to work, but then they would set them up on tours and then they would send them out.
So they're like employees. So this is kind of like what teachers and coaching does, like in a high school where the coach is the football coach, but they also make them the math teacher because they got to do more than just coach to justify the payment that's being.
Yep. And there was a lot of money being burned. I mean, they would throw huge, massive parties. I mean, I remember going to the Roxy and just going and they rented out the Roxy and just threw this gigantic party with all these celebrities, and Ice-T was there and what's his name? Rod Stewart.
Oh, God.
Just like all these random people, that I guess somehow had some type of connection to spinrecords.com.
So what eventually happens in California to get you out of California? How does California finally, how does it end up? What happens there?
Well, so really it's just family, right? So family first. So my mom got sick. She had cancer, breast cancer at the time. She's in remission now, thank goodness. And I was like, you know what? I've been gone for 25 years.
That long, huh?
That long. I would only come home for the holidays. So, then sometimes I didn't come home from the holidays. So I'm like, I can't be gone that long. I mean, I would kick myself. I would feel horrible if something happened and I'm stuck. I'm in LA or California. I got to go back. So, I talked to my wife, and my wife just moved to California.
And where she moved to California?
From Oklahoma.
Okay. Now, before we go any further, I got to stop you real quick.
Yep.
Because as I'm doing research on you, I noticed that you did a spot on Love Connection, which was like the first dating show like ever back, but it was back. Chuck Woolery used to do the host of the show.
Yep.
This wasn't Chuck Woolery when you did it. But you're on the show. So I'm assuming this is before you met your wife that you went on the show.
Definitely.
Now
I don't think she would approve.
Yeah, and anybody wants to, of course, I'm going to put I'll put some of this up there. Yeah. But you can check it out on YouTube. The whole show is on YouTube.
Please welcome Mark Rasmussen. Mark, how are you, buddy? Have a seat, sir. Thanks for being with us. Now, what kind of connections do you have that women use you for?
Well, I publish a magazine. It's a nightlife magazine, a no-cover magazine, and what we do is we cover nightclubs, bars, raves. We got into the music, jumping up and down, and I thought everything was going really well, and then she just stopped.
Now why'd you stop, Tiffany?
Well, I was wearing this bustier thing, and every time I would jump, my nipples would just like pop out.
I do have a question about that, though. This is a question I wanted to ask every male person that ever went on Love Connection, but I never knew anybody. Like, what's the thinking process of this whole entire thing? Did you believe this was the best place to find love, was on a show like this? How do you get into this situation, I guess, is the...
So I got into it when I was working in advertising, and then I was hanging out with my buddy that worked in advertising at the time, and we were at his house, and there was a show on MTV called Singled Out.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we were just drinking some beers and hanging out, and we're like, this show's so stupid. I go, I'm going to call, and I'm going to put you on this show, dude. And he goes, what? And he was a big guy. And I go, no, I'm going to call, dude. I'm going to call that number. I'm going to put you on there. I'm like, hey, I'm Neil Baltodano. And Neil's going to be like, thanks, dude, for announcing me. So, and he goes, you better say your name. You better say your name. And he's like, seriously, he's
big guy,
threatening me. And I was like, this is Mark Rasmussen, and here's my number. And they called me. And so, I mean, they probably called everybody. And there was like, I mean, the show is like there was 50 guys, one girl, right? And then you had to do all these stupid little things and stuff like that. Well, I was like, all right, I'm in LA. I'll just go for the audition. What's it going to hurt? Is check it off on my bucket list.
Yeah, right.
And so I go, and I didn't understand. I mean, I worked in advertising, but I didn't understand television production compared to commercial production. Commercial production is long and drawn out. Television production, man, is brutal. I mean, it's just on and on and on and on, and you just sit and wait. And finally, I get on the show. First, you get to go on 2 shows, right? They shoot 2 shows back to back. First show, gone. I'm done. I'm out. Like, the girl has to pick out characteristics that they like about these guys, and then they narrow it down, and then they do all these stupid stunts. Second show, I go, and I was like, I'm going to make sure I get in the front at least, get some camera time. And Jenny McCarthy was the hostess at the time, and it was that guy, Chris Hardwick, was the host. And Jenny comes up, and she grabs me, and starts talking, and then next thing I know is the girl comes out, and then she's picking all these characteristics, and I'm still there. They narrowed it down. And then they're like, okay, you've got 4 guys left. And then ask them to do something, like some type of stunt or answer a question. And then I made it through that round. And then it was me and two other guys. And then as a speed round, they ask you all these questions. And then I won.
Oh, you girls. Worst drivers, teenagers or old people?
Old people.
Old people.
And the winning answer could be...
Old people, we have a winner. Boy, you made a clean sweep. You kicked everyone's butt. He's not too tall, he has short hair, And he puts stuff all over himself like some weird gorilla. Jenny?
Meet your cutie, honey.
Congratulations.
I won Singled Out, and I won the snowboarding, and I won the date with her, and I won the limo ride, and I was on the commercials, and I was in print ads, and I was on MTV bumpers, and so I was everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And it was funny because when I came home to Cleveland, I didn't think anything of it, but people recognized me. Like, you're the guy on Singled Out. I was like, oh shit, people watch this show. So when I got back, I got calls from every single show. I mean, just
is that what happens?
Yeah, you get listed into this, like,
you already broke in. I guess you're good. We can put you on our show now. I guess.
Yeah. I made an impression on them,
right?
And they said, would you come on our show? And I can't think of the name of all this Blind Date and all these other dating game shows. And then I said, well, can I promote my magazine? Because I was just starting the magazine. And they're like, no, we have advertisers pay us, so we can't have you do that. I'm like, not interested, not desperate. I don't need a date. And then I got Love Connection called me. Again, I said the same thing. I said, can I promote my magazine? And they're like, we don't care what the hell you promote, but you got to pass the audition. If you pass the audition, you can do whatever you want. I was like, I'm in. So I went to the audition, and they asked me a bunch of questions, and they said, well, how would you do this? How would you do that? And I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to get on the show. They called me 2 weeks later, like, we want to have you on the show. I was like, oh, am I going to be like the little square, like one of the 3 people that the girl chooses? They're like, no, you're the main guy. I was like, wow, okay.
That's wild.
Yeah, so I went on the show, promoted the magazine.
Yeah, you did. Because I watched the show. Yeah, you did.
And I promoted my friend's band. So.
And you got to do the whole thing. You got another great story to tell through doing the show.
Doing
Love Connection.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you did the whole thing. I mean, didn't just end with you announced the band in your magazine and said, see ya.
Yeah, no, I went on the date.
Yeah. So how does that all? Like, how legit is all that though? Like, I mean, how much is it like just a regular date? How much can it be that way when there's all this other stuff kind of like with it? I mean, is there some seriousness going on during the date? Are you trying to see if this is going to be the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, or are you pretty much knowing that? No,
I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't think about spending the rest of my life with any woman at that time.
Was she at least cool?
Yeah, she was totally cool.
Oh yeah.
So the whole idea was, I think she wanted to be an actress. I just wanted to promote my magazine.
So that's what these shows kind of also were, right? These were just a way for these people to get on there and promote some things, and then I'll go on a date and make a show out of it also.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's all scripted. It's all really? Scripted. So you go on the date.
No shit.
Yeah, you go on the date, and they're like, okay, after the date, you guys can't talk to each other. I'm like, well, how are we not going to talk to each other? I'm like, I'm talking to her. I have her phone number, and she has my phone number. And they're like, no, you're not supposed to talk, right? The producers tell you that. But we go on the date, and then after the date, they're like, okay, the producers will call and ask me, like, what did you think of the date? Was it a love connection? And I'm like, yeah, she was nice. I didn't really feel any spark or anything. I didn't hate her, And then all of a sudden I get a call like later that week, and it's her screaming and yelling and swearing at me. What are you saying? This is a bad date. What did you say about me doing that? I'm like, I never said any of those things. And then I'm like, let's get the producer on the line. So we get the producer, and the producer's like, look, this is television. You either have a good date or you have a bad date. There's nobody's going to watch.
No vanilla stuff going on.
Nobody's going to watch a okay date.
Right.
They want to see drama or they want to see love. What are you going to give? And then she's like, let's do love. I'm like, all right, whatever. So we're like, you know what? This is the show, because we went on a whole different date. The show you watched, we both made it up. None of that. The only thing that did happen is we did go to the House of Blues and see my friend's band.
That is so cool.
The rest of the stuff never happened.
That's so cool.
We made everything up.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So while we're on there, it's like they'll give you your lines, and you have to memorize your lines. And they're like, okay, now when the host, I forget what his name was, but he wasn't Chuck, which is kind of funny because later on, I wound up meeting Chuck after I was on Love Connection.
Totally different situation.
Yeah, we were at a sushi restaurant in Venice with Chuck was dating one of my friend's friends, and he showed up at the dinner. And they're like, Mark's been on Love Connection.
Oh God, that's an icebreaker.
Yeah, total icebreaker. And I'm like, oh.
I wonder if when he went to the bathroom, he'd be back in 2 minutes, 2 seconds. I know it was stupid.
That was good. No, I like that. Well, it's funny because they would preface before we go on the show, do not call him Chuck. He hates it. Do not call him Chuck. Do not use 2 and 2. Do not use any of that.
Has to be.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that was.
So that was pretty interesting. Again though, that just goes into your situation of interesting stuff. Like amongst all the other stuff that we've already talked about, and some of the stuff we're about to. You're on fucking Love Connection. So, there's something to be said about that. It's amazing to me. And like I said, I've always had questions about that show. You've answered all of them. So I appreciate that.
I can't imagine anybody even thinking about questions on that show.
Oh, yeah, dude. Like the reality of it. That's the one thing I always want to know. I'm like, this can't be.
No, it's definitely not real.
Like, nobody's going on this show because they're like, this is where you find real girls. This is where you're going to find that one, on a TV show. Yeah. I just knew that wasn't.
No. They probably call hundreds and thousands of people, just trying to get them on the show. Things happen, in life. But, there's tons of actors out there, so people want to be on there. I wasn't an actor. No. So that's why they...
No, you did a great job on the show.
Thank you. Yeah. I think that's why they gravitated toward me and asked me to be on the show, because I'm not an actor. I'm not trying to do anything other than promote my magazine. So, but yeah, it didn't work out. No Love Connection. Never stayed in touch. The audience did vote for her. And I got to go on a second date. Well, they gave me money to go on a second date, which, again, I was broke. So I kept the money, and I didn't go on the date. I didn't give her anything.
Excellent. All right, we'll take a quick little break, and we'll come back. We'll probably wrap this thing up in the next one. Mark Rasmussen, No Cover Magazine. A couple minutes. 2 minutes, 2 seconds. This June 10th, Level Up Cleveland Concert Series presents Bittersweet Revenge. You can try to live, but you have to try to die. Olathia. Time to rock and roll, ready for the sun forsaken. And Craig Martini. See them all June 10th at the Maple Grove Tavern. Show starts at 8 p.m. 21 or over. Go to levelupcleveland.com for tickets and information. Everybody, we are back. Mark Rasmussen is still with us. Mark, I want to just touch on something here, because we've talked about No Cover in the beginning and all the way up to everything. We've talked about the time you had on the Love Connection. We haven't touched the music awards yet, though, and that's actually something that we have already talked about already on here many times. When that came out last year, you had it was actually all over the internet. I was seeing it all over the place, all the different nominations, and it was kind of coming out in increments too. It was like you'd get a little bit here, you get a little bit there, which kind of had a build up. It was kind of neat. And I one thing I did find that was fascinating about this was how could you still call something the Cleveland Music Awards? Like, how was that not taken by somebody at some point somewhere? How does that name just still have availability? I thought that was amazing. I thought that was actually cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so these guys are coming out, they're kind of promoting it and everything and trying to, build themselves up, because this is based on, it's kind of a popularity contest, and that's kind of how I described it to them. I was like, this isn't necessarily the best band, because there's no way to really prove that.
Right.
But this was definitely whose fan base was most rabid in a way. Who's gonna really come to bat for you guys now? They might show up at your thing, but are they gonna do the voting? Are they gonna go the extra mile?
Right.
And that's obviously what happened.
It's a lot of work. Especially on asking the fans to do all that. And so who really does have that fan base? You could be the uber cool band in Cleveland and play in front of 10 people.
Yeah.
And you could be like, I'm the uber cool, I'm the greatest. And you could be.
Well, it's kind of the only, I was thinking about this, it's kind of the only way to quantify your greatness. There's really no other way to do it, especially in this kind of thing with cover bands and local bands and stuff who really can't, your album sales, it's not like that here, like you're not really dealing with that anymore. So how do you quantify anything anymore? Something like this is how you do it. What did the fans say? Let them speak. They're the ones that are going to tell you who's the best and who's not or whatever.
Yep.
And I thought that you did a really good job too. I don't know how you went about this, and I'm going to ask, but how did you get the nominations? How did that come about?
So, a little backstory is I did this for 10 years in Ventura County.
Oh, that's I see.
So we started off very humble, like 300 or 400 people above the Crown Plaza. And then our second year, we went into this bar club, and then we invited Chuck D because Chuck D just moved to Ventura.
Oh.
And that catapulted us because now now we got credibility. Like you got Chuck D from Public Enemy coming in, and Chuck was awesome. I mean, he talked to everybody. He gave inspirational speeches. Anybody that came up to him, he took pictures and autographs, and just such a great guy. And we're like, you know what? There's something here. And when I talked to Chuck sat down with myself and my business partner at the time and said, hey, look, you guys are holding something very valuable. I go, what do you mean? We barely made any money. He goes, no. It's about what you're doing. You're uniting people. Unity is part of community. It's in the word. And this is exactly what you're doing. You're creating a community by uniting people. Don't forget that. That's what the whole hip-hop scene was in Brooklyn. He goes, that's how we did it. We said, we don't need anybody else. We are going to create with everybody around us. There's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of great artists. We know graphic designers. We know video editors. We know everything. We can do this ourselves. We don't need a corporation. We just need to unite and create that community. And that stuck with me. And we kept building and building and building till we took over the two largest venues in Ventura County. And we would have, like, my friend John Moyer from Disturbed. He would get out there and he would play bass with a cover band. And people were like, why is this cover band playing a Disturbed song?
Yeah,
and then the bass player leaves and John comes out and the singer doesn't even know about it. And they're like, holy crap, we're playing.
No kidding. The singer didn't even know.
Wow. The audience's mouth just dropped. I mean, we did stuff like that. It was cool. We partnered up with Wendy Dio.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wife of Ronnie James.
And former manager.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's brought, Butler, what was it, from Ozzy Osbourne, a bunch of other hair band artists and stuff like that, and metal artists. But she was awesome. I mean, she was a great person, and we donated to Stand Up and Shout Cancer Fund for Ronnie James Dio. And it was awesome. And then, my mom obviously got cancer, and my dad died of cancer. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be living out in California and doing this. So when I got to Cleveland, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Actually, I just Ubered for fun for a while because I was bored. I was living in my house and I was bored. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be here a while. I'm going to do what I did in California because that's all I really know. I'm not going to do a magazine. Definitely not going to do a magazine. That's a pain in the ass. But I'm going to do maybe the music awards and volunteer and help somebody. And so I Googled Cleveland Music Awards, and I wanted to find the contact information and reach out and tell that person I'm here, I want to help. It didn't exist.
No.
And I'm like, is this right? And I see Scene Music Awards. I was like, oh, that's cool. But they're another magazine. And I'm like, that's cool. But I want to do Cleveland. I want to put Cleveland on the map. How can the Rock Hall city not have their own music awards? There's some major artists that have come out of this city.
Right.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it just like I did with Ventura County Music Awards. And I'm going to build it grassroots. And I'm going to just put it out there. And again, like you said, yeah, it starts off as a popularity contest. It does. The first few years, it does start that way. Because the uber cool artists don't want to be a part of it. They're like, this is cheesy. I'm better than this, blah, blah, blah. And I've had artists that said they're so great that turned me down because they didn't want to lose. They're like, we're afraid of losing.
And I'm like, look, it's like a stain on their whole entire thing. And then, What a way to think. I got to be honest with you. That's a crazy way to think, isn't it?
It's a crazy way to think. So why would you not do that? Why would you not test the waters? If you're that confident, you're that great of a band, why? You know,
because you're not that confident that you're that great of a band.
No, you're not. And again, that goes back to confidence, right?
Yeah.
So I look for artists that exude confidence, because those are the ones. And then the music, when it gives me the chills, I know. But with the Cleveland Music Awards, I have nothing to do with selection process at all. I took myself out of it. I'm just the facilitator.
Got you.
Right? So everybody's like, well, why don't you form a committee? And then you can have this committee choose which bands and then give them an awards. I'm like, well, that's called corruption.
Yeah. That's easily main. You can do whatever you want, and then
That's just your
and then this
friends.
band wins if they give you $50.
Right. Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to mention other award shows.
No, but I know exactly what you mean. You got to let the people really decide this.
Right. And so, you start getting your friends' bands and stuff like that, and it's like, I know nobody here. I came to Cleveland, I knew nobody. I don't know any of these bands. I'm just going to put it out there, and I'm going to put the submission process, and I'm going to, do my advertising, do digital advertising or whatever, social media posts, whatever I could do to get the name and the word out there. And then I met with other music venues, and I posted stuff up there at their music venues. And then I would go to shows, and I would talk to artists, and I'm like, hey, if you want to do this, and then kind of get the word out a little bit. No, my bandwidth wasn't huge, right? So, you got that group of people that only would know, and those are the people that submitted. And then I would take the top 4 submissions from each category, and then those are the nominees for that year, right? So is it a perfect process?
Not yet.
No.
You got to improve on it,
No.
right? I mean, yeah.
No. But if it follows the way it did in Ventura, the best bands do rise to the top.
They eventually get involved, and they start seeing that there are benefits to all this and stuff.
And you know what?
And it's fun. It's fun too, right? I mean, it's
I have no complaints with the bands that were part of this year's awards. I loved all those bands. Yeah. I think they were amazing bands. And certain bands should have won. Yeah, maybe. In my eyes, would I have picked them? I'm not going to say which ones, but yeah, there's certain ones that I was like,
that's part of the process, right? And it's a beautiful thing that some of the bands that you wanted to win didn't. That means the process is working.
Right.
That means that yours, it's not just what you want.
And the other thing is with that, you want performances.
Yeah.
And so I would say which bands want to perform that are nominated.
Yeah.
And of course, most of them did. So then I was like, okay, we got to do this fair, because I can only maybe do 7 bands. And not every band that performed won. And then, they get a little hurt. I'm like, there's no guarantee just because you're performing. And I would tell them.
It's like the Grammys. I mean, it's just like anywhere else. I mean, all award shows are like that, really.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
That's true. They're all like that. They perform. They don't necessarily win, And if they all won, then it would look like it was rigged again. So you gotta be careful with that.
The credibility is the key.
Yeah.
And speaking of the music awards, next month is when May. Look for it in the magazine. And also the best way of getting in front of me is to sign up to No Cover, to the new nocover.com or nocovercle.com, and then put your band profile on there. Because the hardest thing for me with the music awards, because I had no idea who these bands were.
Yeah.
And I opened the submission process, and it all came to CLE Music Awards, and I got bombarded with all these names and bands. A lot of bands don't have profiles. A lot of bands don't have websites. A lot of bands don't have videos out there. And I'm
You're preaching to the choir. I know all about this.
Right. And I'm like, how do I get in contact with you?
Yeah. I tell them all the time, I'm like, dude, just put the name of the guys in the band too on your thing too, so I know who's in the band. Like, don't you guys want to know? Like, don't you want people to know things?
Yeah.
Bands need help.
They do.
Bands need help figuring some of this stuff out, getting their more. If they want to be popular, they're not doing a good job.
Yep. Well, I managed bands before, and so I remember taking this one band, and they would play for beer money at this one bar, and I found them, and they had this one really older guy who was pretty much drinking himself to death, and I was like, you know what? And he was one of the founding members. I had to do a tough call, and I cut him out of there. But I cut him out of there, and I was able to get Ryan Green, who was working with Fat Mike at Motor Studios in San Francisco, and he formed his own in L.A., another recording studio. And I got Ryan, and he worked with Lil Wayne. He's worked with all kinds of artists. But he did their album, and I was able to get them on Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, the show?
3 seasons.
No kidding.
Yeah. And I got them on huge festivals. I got them sponsorships with Jaeger. I mean, so yeah, bands need help, right? And I can help. I'm only one person, but when I was managing, I was like, it was fun. It was cool. It's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of babysitting.
Oh yeah. And speaking of that, because it's a kind of a nice segue to the next thing that we got to discuss real quick.
Yep.
That is the new thing you got going on, which is really basically a whole media empire that you're building here. And it's a lot of the use of this will be to benefit the music scene in this, really just the whole entertainment scene in the end, because podcasters can benefit, music scene can benefit, a lot of different people can benefit for what you guys are coming up with here. And let's talk about that. That's really interesting, and that's something you're in the process of right now.
Yep. So I met a guy at the Music Awards when I just did it this past September. Tim Bishop, my business partner, he asked me, hey man, he goes, I want to talk to you about something. And I'm like, what do you want to talk to me about? He's like, well, I got an idea. And I'm like, what is it? And he goes, well, let's go to lunch and we'll talk about it. So we sit down and we talk, and then he's like, hey dude, I'm really into MMA. I'm like, that's great. I'm not. I have no desire. I don't know anything about MMA. He goes, well, I do. I know everything. And I have an opportunity. We can buy this company. They're selling it. We can buy the cage. We can do everything. I was like, not interested. He goes, but you're great at selling sponsorship. He goes, that's all you're going to do. You sell the sponsorship for these fights. And he broke it down. He's like, look, you can go here, 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 here. You can sell this. You can, and he's like, look at all these other companies in Akron and Columbus. They're selling out. He goes, this company we're buying did Jacobs Pavilion. They sold out. He's like, they just didn't have sponsors. They didn't know how to sell sponsors. And they weren't getting alcohol sales, and they weren't getting concessions. And I'm like, all right, this is cool. All right, let's buy it. So we bought it, and I'm like, well, now we got to find a place to put it. Where are we going to put it? And so we kept looking and looking and looking, and we found this giant 20,000 square foot warehouse in Cleveland, the old Brooklyn area, and we call it The Space. And we are going to be doing MMA fights there, but we also have a stage, and we're doing concerts. We'll do weddings, bar mitzvahs, quinceañeras, whoever wants to rent it. But we also, it's a creative space in the day where we have 9 offices and a conference room and a recording studio. And we bring in podcasters, we bring in videographers, audio people. We have an event photographer. So all those people rent from us, and we filter back that business to them. So we created an incubation within here. So here's everything we need to do our business, but we're going to help your business grow while you help us. And we're going to pay you to run everything for us that we need. So we picked and cherry picked the people that we want to be in there. And we have a full bar license now, so it's being transferred.
You got an alcohol license and everything, right?
Yeah, full beer, liquor,
awesome.
Wine, whatever, and we also have. Keeps expanding, but inside we have WWE wrestler EC3. He's doing a wrestling school. I mean, our place is so big that he can do his wrestling school there and hold wrestling matches.
What about food? Are you guys thinking about getting involved in any of that?
Yeah, we partnered up with La Plaza. So La Plaza's in the Rebar downtown, and La Plaza's in Lakewood, and La Plaza is going to be inside the Space.
No kidding.
So yeah,
so you got everything.
We got it all. Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't have everything. But
well, how long? So where are you at in this process? As far as this thing opening, do you have any idea yet, or is this?
Well, we have to go through the CDC, so we have to get the health inspection, our occupancy.
Oh, but you're at that point already. So you're far into this already.
We're about to get our liquor license, and we're about to open. We actually have one huge concert. My friend Tommy Kirikostas, he owns the Greek Village and Toast, and but he does a lot. He's a huge promoter in the Greek scene, and he's bringing these divas. I mean, I say divas because they're freaking expensive. I mean, he's like, dude, I'm paying a lot of money for these guys. And then I introduced them to a sound company, and their rider's insane. I mean, I would never do a show like this. I mean, but I'm not Greek. He knows all the Greek people, right. And his ticket prices are insane. So he's making his money, but that's going to be our first concert. It's going to be May 12th. Wow. So yeah,
so you're ready May 12th.
May 12th.
Are you?
We have to be ready May 12th.
So everything will be ready May 12th. I mean, just
maybe not the liquor, because we can do a temporary liquor license up until we get our liquor license.
Okay,
but hopefully we will. I mean, our liquor attorney said that we should have it by then, but. I mean, it's the state of Ohio, so I'm not holding my breath on that one.
Okay.
So, but yeah, that's the space. And then we have Honor Fighting Championship. So we're putting our first fight in June. And, we work with Strong Style, which was Steve A's, place that he used to work out of. But, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So,
So here you are going down a new avenue that you haven't done before, MMA fighting and all that stuff, something new for you.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. And then we have, like I said, we have a recording studio in there. And then we have a management company. So we just signed, we have MC Brains, who is the first platinum hip hop artist in Ohio. So he's signed with us. He's also one of our producers. And then we just signed another band. Well, actually, we verbally signed that band. We had a conversation with them here in Cleveland, and we just haven't put anything to paper, but it's going to be incredible. I can't wait to announce that band. And then we're looking for other artists too. So again, if you want to get involved, just go to nocovercle.com, create a profile online. That's the best way. The other thing on our website is on the back end, we have a music supervisor database. So all those bands, and I, like I said, I license songs when I manage bands to Sons of Anarchy. I've also had a song on Feds, which was Russell Simmons' Def Jam Films. So all of that experience I'm putting into the website, and then all the people, like PJ Bloom is one of the biggest music supervisors in Hollywood. He was one of my first writers. He used to subscribe to my magazine. I go, PJ, why are you subscribing to my magazine? And he goes, dude, you got all the new music. You got all the new talent. He goes, I find bands to put on my TV shows, And I was like, oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, maybe I can build something. So, over time I learned what music supervisors are looking for. So I put those filters and everything in the back end. So as long as the band signs up the profile exactly correctly, they'll be able to be found by the music supervisor. Or the music supervisor will tell us, like, hey, we're looking for this kind of music. And I'm like, oh, I know which band you're talking about.
Cool.
Go over there. And then we don't take any publishing, but we do take a fee. I mean, we do a 50-50 split. So it's a 50-50 placement fee. But, I did Sons of Anarchy. I would do $17,000, right? So $17,000 and divided in half. It's not a bad payday.
No, it's good.
Just for a song you already wrote,
yeah.
It's already done, and you don't have to tour. You don't have to travel.
Yeah, right.
It's all right there. Put your music up online and license it. That's where the money is.
And you guys will help them do that.
Yeah,
you guys help them along.
And we're one of many companies that can do that.
Yeah, but see, it seems to me like what you're trying to do is become so all inclusive with so many different options. Where even though there's other companies that are doing certain things like that, you also get this with you. You also get this with you. You also all these other things that are coming along with this. It sounds like it's just a good thing to get up on board with.
That's what we try. We're just trying to bring a creative, like I said when I was in Orange County. And it just started blossoming, right? I want to do that. There's no reason it shouldn't be here in Cleveland, right? So Cleveland should be, and I'm not saying change Cleveland like Nashville, because Cleveland needs to be Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
But Cleveland should be the first city before Nashville, right? Nashville's a great city, don't get me wrong.
It is.
But Cleveland, it's got better economy. It's got a lake. You've got sports teams. You've got all this cool stuff right here. And Nashville has some of that, but it doesn't have all of that. And some reason, somehow, people just skip over Cleveland, when they're touring. And I'm like, it's a perfect route right?
Yeah, we even figured that out. There's some other reasons. There's some underlying reasons why that's happening. It's not just they're just deciding to skip us.
Yeah.
If they thought they could make money in the city to come here and do a concert, they would.
Right.
So there's something else.
There's something.
Yeah.
There's definitely something there.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
what we want to do is we want to showcase and let people know, like, hey, No Cover's here. You're going to be here. Let's work together, and then maybe do a show at the Space.
How many people you think you could fit in a place like that? What's your
Our guesstimate is 900.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So you guys can actually pull some of these national acts to come, and this could be just another venue.
Oh yeah.
This is
It
just
will
going to be another venue.
It will
just
be
go
another
see
venue.
shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for West Siders, this is right in your backyard, man. This is like right. There's nothing else around
and
really
we have
like
free
this.
parking.
Yeah, you got that whole lot right there. Everything.
There's no traffic.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man.
Just get to us, enjoy, have a good time, drive home safely.
So it's cool. It's cool, man.
So now, then we have the No Cover Cleveland, right? So now we're four issues in and working on our fifth. And, we do 10,000 copies, 422 stops. If you want to know every stop we go to nocover.com or nocovercleveland.com, and then click on Media Magazine, and then find our magazine, and you'll see all the locations. And
Who drops all these off? You? Do you do all that?
I do a lot of it. Yeah,
No
I feel
kidding.
like I'm back where I started. My back is killing
man,
me.
that's crazy.
Yeah, because right now it's like I'm not making a ton of money. It's not a moneymaker for me. That's
Well, you're
for
doing
sure.
a lot. You do a lot of startups, don't you? Like you're always renewing and starting over and trying something new. So this isn't new to you, right? I mean, you're just
It's not new, but it's new here, and it's a humbling experience because I was on top in California, and California's still running with my business partner, but it's not as like known here. So it's like just starting all over.
Yeah.
And like I said, even dropping off magazines, you'll see me dropping off magazines. And do I like doing it? No, I hate it. But do I have the money to pay a distributor? Not yet, but I'm getting close. And so I've had few distributors that I've been negotiating and talking to. So it's going to happen, but also I have great staff. So shout out to Trey for being an awesome, amazing editor. Shout out to all my writers for putting in the time, and shout out to my incredible graphic designer. So it's like all you guys have helped me get to here. So I'm willing to put in the effort and the time and drive around to get that beautiful piece of art that you just did for the community. And I'm going to get that in the hands of people, and hopefully people like it, and it takes. Now, I'm focusing on Cleveland-oriented artists right now, right? And I could easily go to, like, Blink-182's playing, and I can go to those guys and I can put them on the cover. Do they deserve it? Yes, of course. But they've already had a cover, right? Will I eventually put bigger artists on there? Yes, I will. Will I still give love to Cleveland? Yes, always will give love to Cleveland. This is a Cleveland magazine. So this is for Cleveland to promote businesses, promote artists, promote art, entertainment, everything.
yeah.
So.
This is the end all be all of entertainment for Cleveland. Really, I mean, if you need to know about it, it'll be in here. And if you want to find out who's new, the upcomings, you'll have them all. You have the ear and the eye to find these people and get it right.
Because I have
man.
zero musical talent. I
Yeah,
can't
but
play an
you got-
instrument. I can't sing. So
Hey, that's talented.
Yeah.
To find bands, there's a talent involved in all that too. So, all right, man. I think that's it. I
this
think
has
we're
been
done.
awesome. Yeah,
dude,
yeah.
this was great.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah,
It's a great way to start the season.
yeah. Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah,
for
we're
having me
starting. We're
for
starting the season today.
Fourth season. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I'm honored to
Thank
be
you.
the first episode.
Yeah, man. With the new studio and everything. Well, not new, but
It's incredible.
It's just like this is like the Brown Stadium. We're not going to get a new one, but we'll put some money into it and fix
I love
it
it.
up.
I love it. I love what you guys are doing. I love the way you support the scene. That's why I'm here, because I want to, partner with people like yourselves that are all about supporting the music scene. Because as you know, you don't make a ton of money.
Yeah.
In the music business, you don't make a ton of money, especially here in Cleveland. It's a labor of love, and then hopefully it can grow, right? It can grow into something. And I think by everybody working together and not creating niches or cliques in this area and this area and this area, like I'm too cool.
Yeah, right.
I don't buy into that. If you're too cool, just like Kevin Lyman, when I would go on tour with Kevin Lyman, we would have our no cover stage, and then Kevin would have the biggest bands open, And the
play it in reverse, kind of
play it in reverse.
No kidding.
Or he would have the biggest bands serving food.
That's pretty neat. That's
everybody
neat.
has to be humble.
I like that.
Everybody has to be
knock
humble.
them down a few notches. Everybody gets knocked down a notch or two, and it's like we're all on the same level.
We're all on the same level.
That's cool,
no
man.
egos, because we're on this tour together. That's right. Cool. And so I kind of take that and Chuck's philosophy and I mix the two together. And that's what I'm trying to do here in Cleveland is just kind of just no egos, stay humble. Let's all work together. It's not about me. It's not about No Cover. It's not about the space. It's not about any Cleveland Music Awards. It's all about uniting and creating community.
Cool, man. That's awesome.
Yep.
Well said. And this month's, it won't be this month. Yeah, it won't be this month when this episode comes out. That's true. This was the month of April or May?
April.
April. Maybe one day you'll see Pat and I on the cover if we continue. Anyway.
You never know.
You never know. We got a long way to go. But anyways, I really appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, we'll probably have to have you on again just to do another 2 hours. Well, that'll get us to the halfway point.
There you go.
Thanks a lot, though, man. And good luck with the awards this year.
Thank you.
Good luck with the magazine.
Yep.
And we'll be pushing it. You know what I mean?
I appreciate it.
Oh,
I appreciate all the support and getting the word out and letting people know, especially about the music awards, because a lot of people are like, how do I do this year? How did I do this year? And obviously, I've got a lot going on. It's still priority number one. I mean, we were able to sign back our sponsors, which is a testament to how well the event went last year. Yeah. So cross our fingers, we can do it again.
Yeah. Okay. And the space. Everyone keep their eye open for the space. We're going to have MMA fighting. We're going to have all kinds of cool stuff on the west side. It's going to be fun.
Yep.
All right, man. That's going to be it for us. And Mark Rasmussen, we'll see you guys next week.
All right.
That'll be fine.